Welcome to a deep dive. This is where we take a whole stack of resources and, well, pull out the most useful insights for you. Today, our topic is something loads of people enjoy, watching TV series.
Right. Who doesn't?
Exactly. But we're looking beyond just, kicking back and watching.
Right.
Our mission here is to unpack this really great collection of resources we found.
Yeah, they're quite specific.
They show you how to really powerfully use TV shows to practice and actually improve your English skills.
It's about making that time count.
For sure. So get ready to turn your screen time into some serious language learning time. Let's dive in and see what these sources tell us.
And what's really interesting, I think, is that these aren't just vague tips like watch more TV. The sources lay out quite concrete, actionable steps.
Right.
And they highlight specific tools you can use. They definitely recognize that, well, watching for fun is one thing, but deliberate practice, that needs a proper method.
Okay, so let's get into those methods then. The very first thing these resources seem to hammer home is choosing the right show. And they give specific criteria, not just, pick something you like. What makes a show right, according to these sources?
Well, it's kind of twofold. First, it absolutely has to be something that hooks you because you need to stick with it, right? Consistency is key.
Makes sense.
But second, it also needs to be appropriate for your current English level and maybe even the type of English you want to learn. Are you going for American slang or, say, more formal British English?
Okay, that's a good point. So where do the sources suggest you actually find these kinds of targeted recommendations?
One place they mention is the Fluent U blog. They've got this huge list, like 100 best TV series for English learners.
Wow, okay.
And it breaks down shows with summaries, gives an idea of the CEFR level. That's the Common European Framework, sort of a standard for language level.
Right, I've heard of that.
And it confirms if subtitles are available, which is obviously important here.
Yeah, super practical. And another source mentioned using filters on sites like realgood.com.
Exactly. You can go in and filter by language, English, obviously.
Yeah.
But also subtitles, yes.
Yeah.
And then even drill down by genre, or maybe what you perceive the difficulty to be.
So you can really customize the search.
You can. And if you want more, like community input, the English Learning subreddit apparently has a massive mega thread.
Oh, Reddit. Okay.
Yeah, with crowdsourced recommendations. And it even includes tips on picking shows specifically for accent practice, US, UK, Australian English, whatever you're aiming for. So it's this mix of finding something engaging, but also meeting your specific learning goals.
Okay. So step one, find your perfect show.
Go bien.
Now, and the next critical piece seems to be subtitles. We all use them, but how do these resources say we should use them strategically? For learning.
Right, not just passively reading. And this is where some tech tools come in that are, frankly, pretty amazing shortcuts. The sources highlight things like the Language Reactor extension. It works with Chrome or Edge, I believe. And it lets you have dual subtitles on places like Netflix and YouTube. So you can see the original English right alongside your native language.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah. And what's really powerful is it has this built-in clickable dictionary. So you see a word or phrase you don't know, just click it. Instant definition, without really breaking the flow too much.
That sounds incredibly efficient, for building vocabulary sort of on the fly. Are there other tools mentioned for working with subtitles?
Yep. Another one is called Subtitles for Language Learning, or SLL. This one lets you do things like slow down the playback speed.
Oh.
Maybe to like 0.8x speed. And it can even auto-pause after each subtitle line.
Oh, wow.
Which is fantastic if you really wanted, dissect a complex sentence or some really rapid dialogue.
I could see that being useful. And what if you're not streaming? Like if you have movie files on your computer?
Good question. For local files, they recommend opensubtitles.org for finding accurate subtitle files, those .srg text files. And then media players like VLC, which lots of people use anyway, let you easily sync those subtitles up if they're a bit off, or even color code them to make them easier to read.
So basically options for however you're watching.
Exactly. The main idea across all these tools is turning that passive reading into a much more active exercise for comprehension and vocabulary building.
Okay, so understanding is a great start. But how do these resources suggest we bridge the gap from just understanding the English to actually producing it ourselves?
Yeah, that's the next leap, isn't it? And this is where they really emphasize the power of repetition. But crucially, not just passively rewatching.
Right. Active repetition.
Exactly. Targeted practice. One method that's described, I think it was in a TED Ed blog post, is called the 3-pass method.
Okay, tell me about that. 3 passes.
So the first pass is simple. Just watch an episode normally for pleasure. Use subtitles if you need them. Just follow the story, enjoy it.
Standard viewing, basically.
Pretty much. Then the second pass is where you rewatch, definitely with subtitles this time, but you're actively pausing and noting down new words, maybe interesting phrases, idioms, whatever catches your ear, in a notebook or maybe a digital tool.
Okay, active listening and capturing.
And then the third pass is the really active one. You watch again, but this time without any subtitles.
Ah, okay. The training wheels come off.
Kind of. And the key here is you pause frequently to actively repeat or shadow specific lines or maybe short chunks of dialogue.
Okay, shadowing. That leads perfectly into that concept. But before we dive deep into shadowing itself, what tools do the sources suggest for handling that repetition part?
Well,
Especially for reviewing those phrases you noted down in past 2.
great point, yeah. Because just writing them down isn't enough. For reviewing vocabulary, one resource points to using something like an Anki deck generator specifically designed for Netflix.
Anki, the flashcard program.
That's the one. It's super popular for spaced repetition. And this tool can apparently automatically create flashcards from the subtitle lines you encounter or save.
Oh, wow.
So after that second pass, reviewing the phrases you collected becomes much, much easier.
That sounds way better than manually typing everything out, definitely. And what about drilling down on just one specific scene or even just one line that's tricky?
Yeah, for really zooming in and looping specific moments, the Plex Loop plugin gets a mention.
Okay, for Plex users.
Right. It lets you isolate and just loop a single scene or even shorter bits within an episode over and over. Imagine you're trying to master a difficult idiom or maybe a really fast back and forth exchange. This lets you just drill it until you feel like you've nailed it. The whole principle here is that short, really focused repetition is incredibly effective for memorization and also for that sort of pronunciation muscle memory.
Got it. Okay, so that third pass in the 3-pass method involves this shadowing. The sources seem to really focus on this technique. What exactly is speech shadowing and why do they say it's so important?
Speech shadowing, essentially, is speaking at the same time as the original audio. You're trying to mimic the actor's pace, their rhythm, their intonation, everything, and closely as you possibly can.
So literally talking along with them.
Exactly. It's about training your mouth and your ear to work together. The basic process they describe involves taking a really short clip, maybe just 20 or 30 seconds.
Okay.
You listen to it once just to get the sound. And then you attempt to shadow it. Speak along with it maybe 3 or 4 times.
And the sources really emphasize recording yourself doing this, right? Why is that?
Oh, absolutely crucial, yes. You record your attempt at shadowing it. And then this is the key part. You listen back to your recording and compare it directly to the original audio clip.
Ah, okay. The comparison.
That comparison is what helps you pinpoint specific pronunciation problems. Maybe it's a vowel sound you're not quite getting, or maybe a tricky consonant cluster, or maybe your intonation is flat where it should rise, things you might not notice otherwise.
Right, you hear the difference.
Precisely. Then you maybe work on that specific issue, move to a new short segment, practice that, and eventually you can try chaining segments together to shadow longer parts of a scene. It's very active, very physical practice for your speech.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there specific resources mentioned that help people actually get started with shadowing? It sounds a bit intimidating.
Yeah, they do point to some helpful starting points. Several YouTube channels get mentioned.
Right.
There's one called Emma Saying Shadow English with Friends. It apparently provides short clips from the show Friends with lines that loop several times, and it actually leaves pauses, like gaps, for you to practice shadowing aloud.
Oh, that's clever. Built-in practice time.
Exactly. And another one is Rachel's English. She has a whole Netflix shadowing playlist. And there, she really breaks down complex pronunciation features you hear in popular shows.
Like what kind of features?
Things like connected speech. You know, how words kind of squash together in natural talk?
Yeah, like gonna for going to.
Exactly. Reductions like that. And also intonation patterns, the melody of speech, the rising and falling. She explains those using examples from shows.
Okay, those sound like really useful guides to make the technique less mysterious. And I think I saw something about tech tools that even give you feedback on your shadowing.
Yes, there are tools that try to add a layer of analysis.
Yeah.
Speechling.org is mentioned. They have a free tier where you can upload a short audio clip from a show, record yourself shadowing it, and their AI gives you some feedback on your pronunciation.
AI feedback, interesting.
And another one, Lingopie, apparently has a karaoke mode. You click on any subtitle line, and it isolates just that little audio snippet for you to do rapid shadow repeat cycles.
Karaoke mode, I like that.
Right. So these tools really support that detailed active practice that effective shadowing seems to require.
It's definitely clear that turning TV watching into real learning takes, well, active steps. It's not passive. So how do the sources suggest keeping track of all this practice? Seeing if you're actually making progress.
Yeah, tracking is brought up. And it's presented less as like homework or busy work and more as a tool for building awareness and, crucially, staying motivated.
Okay.
And they suggest pretty simple, accessible tools, nothing too complex.
Like that study stream streak TV sheet that was mentioned.
Yeah, that sounds like a basic spreadsheet, really.
Yeah.
A log where you just note down the show, the episode, maybe how many minutes you spent actively shadowing or doing vocabulary practice.
Right.
And it can apparently even autograph your weekly hours, which gives you a nice visual of your consistency and effort over time.
Yeah, seeing the chart go up can be motivating. And toggle track, I know people use that for like work time tracking.
Exactly the same principle. It's basically just a timer, but you can create tags for your sessions. So you could tag time specifically as listening practice, shadowing, or Anki review.
Ah, okay.
And then later you can see, how much time you're actually dedicating to each type of practice with your TV watching. Gives you insights.
And there was even a free Notion template mentioned, right? TV diary for English.
That's right. Notion's quite popular for organizing things. And that template sounds like it helps you track progress maybe towards those CEFR goals we mentioned earlier. Dog, the new phrases you're collecting, and maybe even jot down those little aha moments, when a tricky grammar point or an idiom suddenly clicks while you're watching.
Yeah, capturing those breakthroughs.
The core idea, really, across all these tracking methods is just that seeing your effort written down helps reinforce the habit. And it shows you maybe where you need to adjust your focus. Am I doing enough shadowing? Am I reviewing my vocab?
Makes sense. So bringing all these different pieces together, how might someone actually structure this? The sources even offered a kind of sample routine, didn't they? Using just one sitcom episode across a whole week.
Yeah, they laid out a potential blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an example, of course, but it shows how you could layer these techniques.
So what did it look like?
Okay, so for example, on Monday, you might just do pass one. Watch the 25-minute episode through once, maybe with subtitles in English or your native language, just for enjoyment and understanding the plot.
Great, easy start. Then Tuesday. Maybe you focus just on the first 5 minutes of the episode. You rewatch that section using a tool like Language Reactor to click on unknown words and maybe save them to an Anki deck. Okay, vocabulary focus.
Then, from that same 5-minute segment, pick out just one short clip, maybe 30 seconds long, and use a loop tool, or just rewind manually and shadow that short clip about 5 times.
And crucially, record that last shadowing attempt, right, to compare it later.
Precisely. That comparison step is vital for identifying what needs work.
Okay, so that's Tuesday. What about later in the week?
Well, the routine suggested maybe leaving a gap, then perhaps on Friday, spending some dedicated time just reviewing all the vocabulary and phrases you collected in your Anki deck throughout the week. Spaced repetition practice.
Got it. Review day.
And then maybe also on Friday or over the weekend, do one final pass 3 through the entire episode, but this time with no subtitles at all. Just focusing purely on your listening comprehension, seeing how much more you understand now.
Wow, okay. That sounds like a really consistent, multi-layered approach. Even just with one episode over a week, it feels like that could build skills pretty rapidly.
That's the suggestion, yeah. The sources imply that sticking to a pattern like that, maybe for just a few weeks, could lead to noticeably sharper listening skills, smoother, more natural-sounding speech from the shadowing, and just developing that better intuitive feel for how English works.
Okay, so let's recap. We've covered how to choose the right show, one that hooks you but also matches your level and goals. We explored smart ways to use subtitles, leveraging those specialized tools for dual subs, definitions, slowing down playback.
Right, a tech assist.
Then we talked about the power of targeted repetition, not just rewatching, but actively using methods like the 3-pass system and tools like Anki and loopers to really internalize the language.
Getting it to stick.
We delve deep into speech shadowing, what it is, how to do it, the importance of recording and comparison, and the resources available from YouTube guides to AI feedback tools.
The active production part.
And finally, we looked at how simple tracking methods can make a big difference in staying motivated and just being aware of your practice.
Keeping yourself accountable.
It's really fascinating, actually, how these sources outline ways to turn something most of us do for fun, watching TV, into such a structured and potentially effective learning method.
It really is. And, here's where it gets really interesting, I think, if we sort of zoom out and connect this to the bigger picture. What does all this really mean?
Yeah.
Well, it powerfully highlights that integrating learning into something you genuinely enjoy, like watching a favorite series, doesn't have to be just a passive background activity.
Right.
With the right strategies, and maybe some of these tools we've talked about, it can become a serious engine for active skill development.
It makes a lot of sense.
And this naturally raises a pretty important question for you, the listener. How could you maybe take these same core principles, this idea of targeted engagement, focused repetition, active production practice like shadowing, and tracking your efforts, and adapt them?
Adapt them to
Other types of media you already consume and enjoy. Could you use similar techniques with music lyrics? Or maybe podcasts you listen to? Or even perhaps video games to practice different aspects of English?
That's a really interesting thought. Applying these structured learning ideas beyond just TV shows, definitely something to think about as you decide which series to binge next.
Exactly.
Happy watching and happy learning.